Hello, everyone. Jeff and Todd here. We're going to talk to you about an interesting investment opportunity that we have been working on for quite some time now. And I will let Todd tell us all about that. Todd, what are we talking about today?
We're going to be talking about Mahoru Catamarans and Shipyard, which will be in Ponce, Puerto Rico.
Yeah, that is exactly what I believe. Sorry, I'm switching over to the slides here for everyone to see. There we go. All right, Todd, you're seeing the slides now, so hopefully everyone else is as well.
Yep, I see him fine.
Great, great, great. All right, very good then. All right, so this is what we're talking about. And Todd, why don't you tell us a little bit about the business opportunity and why we think it's a good idea?
Yeah, so the whole aspect around Mahoru Catamarans stemmed from the fact that I already own a charter company here in Puerto Rico and have had a lot of conversations with other brokers throughout the US and through the island itself, talking about some shortcomings in the charter market. One of the biggest issues that almost everybody runs into is the Jones Act. For those of you unfamiliar, the Jones Act is a law that's about 100-ish years old, and it has major restrictions on the commercial maritime space. Most people think that has primarily just to do with the transfer of goods, but it also has to do with the transfer of passengers and how people move around on boats in a general way. One of those aspects is within the charter space itself. So the way the Jones Act works right now is if you are a foreign built boat, you are extremely limited on what you can do. What that means is you cannot operate in any capacity as a commercial vessel. So the only way to get around that, they made the small vessel waiver program, which allows you to carry up to 6 people. Anything more than that becomes prohibitively difficult, where you would have to get like your COI or certificate of inspection, but you will always be capped at 12, no matter what. To put that into a realistic way people can understand, is I can have 100-foot yacht that is foreign built, and the most people I will ever be able to legally carry on that in a commercial capacity is 12 people. That's a problem. So the way the Jones Act is designed to work around that is to encourage U.S. shipbuilders to make U.S. boats, and then they're no longer limited to these restrictions. Once you get your COI, then you're limited to the capacity of the vessel, and that's something we want to do. Right now, the U.S. makes very, very, very few ships in relation to the rest of the world, and when looking at the catamaran space, makes almost zero. So we're looking to make 55, 65, and potentially 75-foot luxury catamarans, primarily for the commercial space. So these things would have their COI and be able to have max capacity on them right the moment they splash. This grants a unique and very valuable opportunity for charter companies in order to have larger groups actually board their boats for a commercial aspect. What commercial allows is for things like ticketed. So if you wanted to do like 50 people on a boat, they can all be a ticketed individual. It allows for larger group venue events like weddings or receptions, bachelor parties, bachelorette parties. Corporate events is a big growing segment as well. No matter what you look at, if you want to do a corporate event, a foreign built boat will never be able to hit the capacity necessary to sustain a group over 12. Ours all will be able to.
Right.
Another thing we're seeing, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was just going to say this is, I think that for people that maybe they travel a little bit, they might know that things like ticketed vessels are very common elsewhere in the Caribbean and elsewhere in the world.
Yep.
If you fly to like Aruba or Barbados, you can do like a sunset sail where you just pay $100 or $150 and go out on the boat per person. And that's just simply not available in Puerto Rico. It's not available in South Carolina or Hawaii because those US waters have this restriction. And that's really what we're trying to solve.
Yeah. There are a few custom yards that build right now. I believe there's two I know off the top of my head, but the issue with them being custom yards is the lead time is very long. Each vessel has to be individually approved by the U.S. Coast Guard. So it actually makes the process a lot longer, a lot more time consuming. And some of these yards can take up to 5 years. For the moment you put your first money down to the moment you get a vessel, could be 3 to 5 years. We're focusing more on a production style. Think of like Ford and Chevy. We're not building you a custom car. All of our approvals for the design has already been done by the Coast Guard. So we could put out the same model with different modifications for layout, which doesn't change the approvals. So we could do this more consistently and we can ramp up much quicker as well. Going over to the current market just in general, while the charter market in general is growing for both multi-days and day charters in general are actually growing at a much faster pace. And it has a lot to do with a lot of people are starting to see more money, but they're not seeing enough money that spending 40, 50, $60,000 to go out on a week long trip makes sense. But a day trip split amongst a larger group becomes a very, very valuable proposition for them. So we're seeing a lot of growth within the current market for day chartering, and especially with wanting to do things with larger groups. So creating an actual catamaran yacht that fulfills those needs is in desperate need.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the timeline of where we are in this project and what we've accomplished so far and what the next steps are going to be.
Absolutely. So this has been something we've been looking at for, oh my gosh, almost the past 2 years right now. Initial research started in 2022, really trying to figure out, does this make sense? Am I the only charter company running into this problem? And that's where I started to find out by talking to a lot of different companies that no, this is not. A lot of these companies are seeing older vessels that they need replaced. A lot of them want to be able to expand, but they have nothing really to expand to. Or the lead time to expand is 3, 4, 5 years out, which just for any business, if you think about it, having to wait 5 years to be able to expand, even though you're ready to do it now, is a problem. So we really started to dig in that early in 2022. From there, we had conversations with Royal Haskening, which is a major shipyard developer, one of the largest shipyard developers in the entire world, as a matter of fact, as well as had conversations with the local government, the Department of Economic Development here in Puerto Rico, had conversations with naval architects, specifically Morelli and Melvin. Morelli and Melvin's one that is very interested and intrigued about the product. Really, really good company. They've been in the America's Cup 8 times. They have 21 Boat of the Year awards. Probably one of the most decorated naval architects, especially in the catamaran space worldwide. So they're on board with the project. As I mentioned before, Royal Haskening, which is a major shipyard developer, is on board with the project as well. The Department of Economic Development here in Puerto Rico is on board. And we've just recently secured the land itself from the Port Authority of Ponce, which this place will take place in. And that is a beautiful piece of land, already industrial, already within the port, which should make streamlining this process significantly easier.
Right. And so that's kind of where we are now. We recently got the land approved, and we've got a letter of approval from them, and we're getting ready to move forward with studies, frankly, done by some of the companies that you were just mentioning, like Royal Haskin and those groups like that. So we're going to
Yeah,
move forward with them. But in order to do that, we have to spend a significant amount of money, and we're looking to have some people partner with us to move this project forward. Because as you might imagine, a project of this size is not something that you really, a single individual would often do, right? Like we're going
correct.
to build an actual shipyard to build actual boats that go into the charter market. And these things are going to take a significant amount of capital and a significant amount of development as well. So
Correct.
what are the next steps here, Todd? Just getting the consultants on board to start designing the shipyard and designing the initial boats. What
Yep.
other things are people going to be doing here in the near future?
Yeah, so timed out with the raise, one of the first things we're going to be putting money into is like with any project on government land or of this scale, we're going to be doing a full feasibility study first. Um, we believe we've done a lot of our research just internally, and we believe everything will actually pan out very well and come out positively. But with everything else, especially when raising the amount of money in the next round that we'll be looking for, a third party feasibility study is going to be necessary. That will just really determine, does it make monetary sense? Also, on an environmental level, what is the environmental impacts? And this is where I think we've done a really good job in the level of partnering with an already industrial port. I don't expect any environmental impacts that are unexpected to pop up because of this. Second, we'll be working with Marley and Melvin to design the actual catamarans and send them over to the U.S. Coast Guard to be inspected and approved for commercial purposes and just general use as well. And then from that, we'll be looking to do the second raise, which will allow us to get permits, start to lay out construction terms, begin hiring. And in our second raise, we'll be filing for what's called Act 60, which is a major tax incentive here in Puerto Rico. And by 2026, our target is to start producing and putting out our first catamarans.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'm excited about all that. So, let's talk about the. I mean, we kind of covered some of this before, but let's talk about the customer for a minute. Obviously, starting off, you're the existing customer base, right? Like your kind of company,
Yes.
charter companies are what we're targeting. So we understand that customer really well because you're one of them. But what else would you like to share about the customer and what they're looking for?
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, our main initial target is going to be charter companies. Our first target of that subset is going to be day charter companies like myself. Those are groups that are looking for options and opportunities to carry out larger groups and to do it in a commercial capacity. Commercial allows you to have full control over the entire aspect of the vessel, the crew, every aspect you have control over, just like any other commercial entity. But it doesn't really stop there because what ends up happening is once the hull is approved and structurally sound, it does open other opportunities where you can modify the inside a little bit and then have a charter ready boat that can flex between day charter and multi day charter, where companies like Moorings, Dream Yachts, and a myriad of others in the Caribbean are very interested in something locally made. So, an issue a lot of these Caribbean charter companies run into is if they need a specialist, if they need a technician who only understands that vessel, or a lot of times if they need parts, they have to reach out to France, Poland, South Africa, or China. Well, when a humongous segment of your charters are in the USVI, the BVI, and even a little bit of the Lesser Antilles, having something built, manufactured, and maintained in Puerto Rico, which is right down the, literally less than 100 miles away in some of these scenarios, really opens up a wonderful opportunity for these vessels to be better maintained, better taken care of, which is beneficial to their owners as well. So it opens up not only just the day charter space, but then opens up a segment within the regular charter space with normal owners and provides a lot more options for what they can do with their vessels.
Yeah, so let's talk about the land for a minute. So the thing about the land is you alluded to this earlier. We feel very comfortable with the land from an environmental impact perspective because, as you can see in this slide here, the land that we've identified is in the middle of an existing industrial port in Ponce, Puerto Rico. It's already currently zoned industrial. There's industrial activity going on literally all around it. It is, as you can see, also in the middle of the port, so it is attached adjacent to the water. So what are we looking at here? The green triangle is the piece of land itself
Yep.
that we're looking at, and it's already capped by cement, so there's no land disturbance that needs to take place. And it's already been utilized for industrial purposes in the past, so there's no reason to assume it wouldn't be approved going forward. Of course, we still need to do that environmental study. That's part of what we're working on now. But what is this area to the left on the screen there, the blue area? What is that? And what are we looking at there?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned before, the green area, that triangle, that is where the main facility will be. The blue is the access road. So that is currently a public access road for the companies around it, and we would have full use of that road. That road will be built out, and that's primarily so we can access that little orange square down at the bottom where the water is. That is actually where we're going to be putting in the vessels that get built. So that's the splashing area. So we'll be rebuilding up the service road as well, and actually building out the ramp in that orange area. What's
Right.
great about that orange area is there's already pilings in the water, which means there was a ramp there before. So we're
Right.
not doing anything new or unique. This is already stuff that's been there, been approved, and has been done before. We're just rebuilding it out to fit our purposes.
And to be clear, if we were to zoom out on this, we're in the middle of a deep water port, less than a tenth of a mile away. The largest cruise ship in the world docked. Right, this is a
Yeah.
functioning port that exists, and the Port Authority has already granted us the right to this land. So this land is secured, and we can build here when we move into the second round. We'll be
Yep.
building three separate structures more likely than not. Obviously, the design work's not done yet, so they could be combined in some fashion. But we'll be building several thousand square feet of manufacturing space in the green area, repairing the road, rebuilding the dock, and then dropping boats. Or well, at least the dropping the boat area in that yellow surface area there. And then what is the purple area where you can see there's a dock there now that looks like it needs in a little bit of disrepair.
Yeah. So that right there, that whole dock is being repaired by the Port Authority themselves. They already have the funds secured by FEMA to do the repairs necessary to get that finally up and running again. They just haven't moved on it because there's no projects that need it right now. But that space in there is an actual great place where if we need to temporarily store our boats until like the new owner comes down to pick it up, or we do a delivery of it, that's a great place for them to sit. You always need a little bit of storage space so it's just
Right.
not eating up the yard.
And there
One,
are, just to be clear, there are other places nearby where we could potentially store them as well. And we have
yep,
had that conversation with the head of the Port Authority, and expressed that we may need some temporary storage. And he's indicated to us directly that that wouldn't be a problem, that he would find us place to store it. And most likely it'll be right there because it's very close and efficient for us and for them.
two other things I want to touch on real quick, just to make it, mention, even though it's kind of visible. You can see within the green triangle, there's already some boats that were being stored in there from this image. So it gives you an idea of the scope of the plot. It's around an acre. So there's plenty of space to build out for our initial structure, but also, and this is discussions we've had already with the port, that if we need to expand, there's a lot of additional land that we can pick up within the port itself to expand operations down the line.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a really good point. Let's talk about the numbers for a minute, and I'll spend a little bit of time on this, but we're looking at estimated sales prices of $1.75 million for a boat. And Todd, you've researched the boat cost because you try to buy these boats. Do you feel like that number is representative of where this product would end up?
Yeah, I think is pretty comparable. I do believe there's options to go a little bit higher purely because there'll be certificate of inspection approved, which most boats don't have, and it's very difficult to get. So there is potentially some upside on it, but I believe it's a very comfortable space to be at around the 1.751.
Yeah. And I think we can, we'll make these slides available to anyone that's interested in the details. But the very short version of it is the margins within the industry, even taking dealer incentives into effect, which we may not need to do because the number of units that we're actually looking at selling, as you can see in the bar graph on the right hand side, is to be profitable, we need to sell about 3.5 to 4 boats, right? If we sell 10, 15, 20 boats a year, the profit goes up dramatically. And that's really what you're seeing there. The gross profit, um, in year 3 and year 4 is quite nice, right? Because of, if we sell 20 boats a year, we're looking at gross profit of Todd, it occurs to me that this graph doesn't make it very easy to see the actual profit numbers, but
Yeah.
but the profit per unit is approximately $480,000. If we sell 10 boats, it's about a $4 million gross profit. We do have some fixed costs that come out of that, so the actual profit is about $2.5 million, and then it goes up pretty dramatically from there as we ramp up production. This graph really shows that our intent is in year 3 and year 4 to sell between 20 and 25 boats a year. And if we look down to the next slide, you can see that that makes the company worth a pretty substantial amount. If you have a 3.5 times profits, it's worth about $46 million. And we're really
Mhm.
looking at, in that second round, our estimated capital needs are around $20 million. And of course, some of that will come from loans. So the return on investment potentially can be quite large when we get to that second round. But what we're really looking at now for the purposes of this discussion is raising that initial seed capital to do all the third-party studies to get the initial work done so that we can move into the second round. And in the second round, we do believe this project will be very, very profitable. And there's an opportunity for people to come in ahead of that and get a reasonable return on investment plus an ability to get in at the ground floor and get a discount when we do go to that second round. And that's really what we're looking at from an opportunity perspective here. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But before we dig into that, I would love to talk about some of the incentives that we get that will even make these numbers look better, right? Like going forward, it'll look a lot better. So you mentioned that in the second round, we would be applying for Act 60. Let's talk about that for a minute. So the super, the 10,000 foot view on Act 60 is that the Puerto Rican government is encouraging economic development by offering favorable tax incentives to Puerto Rican businesses and also to individuals who move to Puerto Rico or currently live in Puerto Rico. There's a lot of nuance to it, but as it applies to our catamaran business, these are the incentives here on the left that they've already indicated to us that we would be eligible for. So Todd, why don't you've had that discussion with the Department of Commerce on the island. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what they told you?
Absolutely, absolutely. So on the manufacturing end, which is what we will fall into, there's a few major tax incentives that I think are extremely good. In fact, I actually think there's some of the best incentives worldwide. For starters, on the corporate level, we only see a 4% income tax versus, I don't know, what is it, like 25, 30% right now in the
Yeah, I
US?
mean, it's a sliding scale in the US, but this is actually capped at 4%. So the maximum income
Yep.
tax that the corporation will pay is 4%. And this is actually really, I mean, and of course, we're not giving accounting or tax advice to y'all as investors, but from a Puerto Rican perspective, income earned in Puerto Rico is taxed in Puerto Rico. It's not taxed in the US. Now, of course, if you live in the US, you may have your own tax liabilities from that. But if you were to invest in a similar corporation producing a similar product in South Carolina or something like that, you would pay that higher United States federal corporate income tax and then still have your personal income taxes. And here, whatever savings there is between whatever that federal corporate rate would be, which could be as high as 30% or a little bit higher, depending on the profitability of the company. And 4% is a pure savings, and it translates into additional profit and margin for the investors and for the company itself.
Yep. Also, there's a 75% exemption on inventory tax. The way Puerto Rico does inventory is not just completed goods, but it's also what you have in storage to manufacture. It gets taxed once per year. So this is a reduction of 75% on all of the inventory that we carry. There's also a 100% tax exemption on raw materials, machinery, and equipment. This is a huge tax savings just in general. All the materials, like we're looking to build aluminum based hulls, all excise taxes and stuff like that that we would normally have to pay to get these raw materials, waived. All taxes to bring in machinery that we need that's not made here, waived. Same thing with equipment. That is a humongous tax savings. Next, we have a 100% tax exemption on dividends. For people who are living already in Puerto Rico, this is absolutely massive because there's a 100% tax exemption from Hacienda.
Yeah, and this is
If you're
just to be clear for people that aren't living in Puerto Rico, you may still pay tax in the US, but you'll pay it at your regular dividend rate, and there'll be no and again, I'm not giving tax and accounting advice. You should definitely run this stuff by your your personal tax advisor. But the point is Puerto Rico is not going to tax anybody for those dividends. Whether you live in Puerto Rico or not, you're not going to pay Puerto Rican tax on dividends that are issued by the company to you as an individual investor.
Yep. There's also a 50% exemption on municipal license taxes. While it's a nice one, I'm not going to lie, that's not going to add up to a massive number, but it's still very nice. And then the big one is a 4% tax cap when you sell the business. So, 5, 6, 7 years down the line, 10 years down the line, if we sell the business for 50, 60, $70 million, it's only a 4% tax that happens on that sale.
Right. And
So
that's a
allows
that's a cap on the capital gains tax that would otherwise in the United States would be, depending on what the rules are, in 10 years or 5 years or 7 years or whenever we were to decide to sell, if we were to do that, the rate would be like 22% currently. So I mean it's fairly significant difference, especially when you're talking about tens of millions of dollars or potentially more. That savings in tax can literally translate into millions of dollars in tax savings.
Yep. Then on the flip side, on top of Act 60, Ponce, the actual town, and yeah, the town of Ponce also provides a list of stackable incentives. I don't have all of those right now. I do have a few of them, but we didn't list them. And those are additional exemptions on inventory taxes, additional exemptions on municipal tax licenses, some of them stacking all the way up to 100%.
Yeah,
Which just adds a little bit more savings because the municipality ones stack on top of the
yeah,
state government
and I
ones.
think that the key here, and when we get into the cash grants in a second, but I think the key here is that the opportunity for the business is, the market's there. We know that, we verified that. We're very confident in the fact that people like Todd's company would want to buy this product. The margins are, on an industry-wide basis, pretty solid. But when we take industry margins and then we layer in these tax incentives, we're actually getting essentially the same product or a better product for less money, and being able to bring that to market, which increases the margin for the individual investor, for the company, and also allows us to get some things, especially when we get to these cash grants, like potentially even produce a product that wouldn't be economically viable. Now it's not only economically viable, but highly attractive.
Yeah. So potential cash grants that we had in-depth discussions on with the Department of Economic Development. The first two are ridiculous and they're around job creation in general. The simple one is for every job we create, we can get up to $5,000 per employee. Simple, clean, easy.
Yeah, and just to be clear,
This
we're looking at, at a minimum of about 20, but probably as many as 30 employees in the first few years. And so that's $100,000 as a cash grant, potentially maybe even more.
So the next one I actually think is one of the most insane cash grants I think I've ever seen ever. and is staff training of up to 50% of the salary of the person for a minimum of 6 months up to 2 years.
Yeah, and minimum of 6 months. So, and we've already had the initial conversation about this, and they've indicated to us that they anticipate giving us this. It's not like maybe we might get it. It's like highly likely that half of our staffing costs will be covered by grants from the government.
I would say, yeah. By the way, a lot of these ones that I'm talking about right now is the last conversation I had with the director of the Department of Economic Development. He literally was like, "You apply for this, you apply for this, you apply for this. Like, you need to apply for these things." He was
Yeah, and
very much saying, not they exist. It's like, no, if you're doing this, I want you to apply for this.
right. So the I think the underlying point is that the Port Authority in Ponce is highly favorable of the project. The government of Puerto Rico, the director, like these, we're not talking to some like low level staffer here. We're having conversations with the actual director of economic development for the island, and they're telling us apply for this. We want to give you this. We want to give you this because they really like the idea of building additional manufacturing in Puerto Rico and opening up this new market.
Yep. The next big one, and this is actually, I think, one of the biggest ones, is machinery and equipment. You can get 30 to 35% of the cost back as a cash grant or tax credit. They say it's up to 50%, but when I had the conversation, basically, he's like, realistically, most of the time it's 30 to 35%. So it could be up to 50%, but we're erring on the side of caution, saying it's 30 to 35.
If it was 35, if it was 30%, I would just jump back to the slide here a second. Our estimated equipment costs are in excess of $3 million. So potentially 30% of that is $1 million that they're going to write us as a check to reduce that budget. So when we come up with our projected returns based on, 18 to $20 million investment, and by the way, we're not looking for that from y'all right now. So if you're don't jump off because I said 18 to $20 million investment. That's the total project. But but that could be $1 million literally given right back to the shareholders in the form of cash. Just from that one cash grant.
Yep.
And then
Next,
the research and development is another one that,
yeah.
Like, cause I do, I do want to, want to get people to the point of the discussion. Right. But the main point is there's a ton of tax incentives. There's a ton of cash grants. There's a ton of incentives, period. And we've done the work to line these things up and to stack them on to make an opportunity that frankly is unlike any I've seen in my investing career. I really believe that this product that we're going to produce is going to be revolutionary. It's going to fill a hole in the market that doesn't exist now, that that there's nothing to fill it. And it's going to provide us an opportunity to provide a very solid return to our shareholders. And that's why we're really excited to bring this opportunity to the market and to you as individuals if you're watching this webinar today.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you have anything you want to add about the infrastructure research and development grants?
Yeah, so the nice thing about the research and development grant is it's not a one-time thing. There'll be levels of research and development that go in with the vessels over time. Like, hey, we want to really focus on making a sustainable model. We want to make it so it runs off less diesel or no diesel. And all these things require a little bit of study. So every year you can apply for the research and development grant and actually get 50% back. And that includes operating costs, not just the research costs. And the infrastructure tax credit is really more around the dock and that service road. So because we're actually working on government, building up infrastructure for the island on those two parts, they fall under the infrastructure tax credit as well.
And just to be clear with the service road, that's not part of the property that we're personally, controlling. They're giving us right to access it in exchange for repairing it for them. So as a result of that, other people will be able to utilize that if they in fairness, it's in the middle of a port and they wouldn't have any need for it. But if someone did have a need for it, they would have access to that service road as well. Um,
Correct.
and that's why they're going to give us potentially some substantial credits to help offset the cost of doing that. But again, we didn't layer those in our budgetary projections. We're saying, hey, this is something that we're going to get on top of what we're already projecting. So the numbers that we show, for the most part, are not anticipating the requirement of all these things. If they were to literally say, you don't get that, it does not change the numbers. If we do get it, it makes it even more profitable, not less profitable. Our projections
Yep.
are actually fairly conservative in those assumptions. So let's talk about, let's quickly talk about who we are. I mean, we probably should have done this at the beginning. If you don't know me, I'm I was a bankruptcy attorney for a long time. I have a master's in business. So I'm both a lawyer and an MBA. I do primarily real estate investments. My area of expertise is in putting together large real estate deals where I pool people's money together to structure the takedown of like apartment buildings, of office buildings, factory buildings, things like that. And I've built a nice portfolio and gotten great returns for my investors. Obviously, past performance is no indication of future performance. That's the lawyer in me talking. But this is something that I do on a regular basis. I'm also, invest in my own money into both this project and other projects that I put together. I've overseen the sale of a large transportation company to a publicly traded company. I can't get into too much details of that because of my non-disclosure agreements, but we did do a $30 million liquidation on that company. And so we continue, and I've continued to stay involved in business my entire career. Todd, why don't you tell us a little bit about you? Obviously, we've already talked about how you have a luxury day charter company in Puerto Rico, but let's talk a little bit about the rest of what you've done, and then we'll briefly touch on, our consulting partners as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So quick and easy is I've been a serial entrepreneur for the majority of my life. I've built up multiple businesses, including cigar bars, restaurant marketing companies, and really, really delved heavily into the maritime space. Now, like you mentioned, with the luxury day chartering company, done a lot of research and working heavily and closely with the U.S. Coast Guard to really understand the full scale of all the laws and done heavy research in all of that. To the point where I've actually had several people in the Coast Guard wonder if I should open up my own consulting firm, a consulting firm to actually teach other charter companies around here how to properly operate within the law. I've been an experienced salesperson, both for small businesses and enterprise level companies. So I know how to work with a myriad of clients. And I think the biggest one of all of this is I can say without a doubt, I will be the first client just because I know the demand and I'm running into the issues right now within my own companies.
Right. Yeah. Excellent. So appreciate that. So tell us, I mean, I know we covered Royal Haskening and Morelli and Melvin briefly. Both of them have agreed to, to do some additional work for us. Obviously that's compensated work, but is there anything you want to share with us about them, or do we want to just move on to the management group?
Yeah, just again, a quick recap on them. Royal Hassending has a branch here in the United States that we'll be working with primarily. They are literally one of the, I think they're the second or third largest shipyard manufacturers. They've done projects for the US government and various other governments as well, and as small down as other small private shipyards and marinas. So they're
Right.
very, very well versed and
And,
very well experienced in the space.
and to be clear, that's who we're anticipating hiring to, we've already had these conversations with them. So we know that that's, as we move forward in this race, we're going to hire them in the very near future to actually start designing the layout of the yard itself.
And they'll be doing the studies that are necessary, the
Right.
feasibility study and economic impact study, or environmental impact study.
Right.
Again, as a recap, Morelli and Melvin, 21 Boat of the Year awards, specializing in the catamaran space, has won, their designs have won the America's Cup. They're literally one of the best naval architects and engineers worldwide. They were very excited about this project, and they firmly, I've been told by one of the owners that he said, and I quote, if this gets up and running, you'll have your first few years booked out just from people in Hawaii who need these boats. So that made me very excited when I heard that, because it just reestablished my belief in it.
Right. And just to be clear, that's not a firm commitment. So we don't want you to
No,
invest
no.
based on that. But the point is, people in the industry believe in the project. I mean, even like going to boat shows, like as recently as last week, having heard from other charter operators, yeah, they're very interested in purchasing this product should it become available. And we know it will become available because we're going to make it happen. And let's
Yeah.
talk about the management group briefly. Todd, what are they doing for us and why is it important?
Yeah, so SOGA is pretty much our liaison to the government entities here in Puerto Rico. For anyone who's ever had to deal with government before in business building, having someone who knows all the inside stuff, knows the people by name, is excellent to have. To use this as a literal quick thing, when we started working with SOGA and Luis specifically, I had a meeting with the director of the economic development team within 3 days of the actual discussion. Something
Right.
that has taken people months to do, he got it done for us in 3 days. And he's just been making sure that things move along quickly and efficiently so this project does not stall.
Right. And we have signed a contract with him to continue to have him consulting with us throughout the duration of this project. So I believe that that will be invaluable as we move forward. So let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about
He'll
the opportunity really.
actually, if I want to
Yeah,
touch really quick on one more
sure.
thing, because of his actual direct connections with the government, he's actually going to be the one assisting us getting through to the cash grants and all the Act 60 stuff.
Yeah.
So this is something he's very much specialized in, and he'll be able to push this along to get it fast tracked the entire way.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about what we're trying to do. So we're looking to raise $500,000 right now in the form of a convertible note that pays a 15% interest rate. Now, the way that's structured is the interest is paid on the start, or really from the revenue in the second round. So it's convertible as well at the election of the note holder. So in other words, if you in a hypothetical situation were to invest $500,000, you would get 15% at the point where you were paid back. But at that point, you could choose, like, just for simplicity, let's say it was exactly 1 year, that would be $75,000 in interest that you accumulated. You could choose to convert that whole $575,000 into equity at a discount from whatever that second round raise is going to be. And that discount is a 15% discount. The minimum amount that we would take from an investment is $100,000. So we want to keep this to a relatively small group of individuals. We don't want to have 500,000 people investing $1 each because it's just unwieldy. But we're looking for $100,000 minimum investment, and again, the interest is paid on conversion. Now, Todd, let's talk for a minute about why we need $500,000 and what we're going to do with that 500,000.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do
So
want to
the
before you dig into that. Actually, I do want to make one additional mention, and that is that 500,000. Any money that Todd or I put in are going to be put on the exact same terms as the individual investors, and we don't anticipate raising more than 500,000 in this round. So it's actually not true that a full 500,000 is available right now because we've already gotten some of that money in. But if you want to invest 100 or 200,000, you should definitely reach out to us and have that conversation with us. But anyway, so the 500,000, Todd, how are we using it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the overwhelming bulk of this is for studies and designs. That's, we're looking at around $350,000. So 200 set aside for the third party studies done by Royal Haskell's, and about $150,000 set aside for the designs done by Morelli and Melvin, and to get all the appropriate U.S. Coast Guard approvals for the design itself. From there, we're looking at professional fees, lawyer fees. This is where SOGA comes in as well. all of those fees, accounting, that comes to about 25,000. And then operating expenses, because there'll be a lot of travel back and forth to the yard and some expenses that pop up, managing investors and stuff like that. 10,000, there's a $25,000 deal management fee. And then we're holding about $90,000 for post-study action. So if the study comes back and everything looks as we expect it, part of that money will be to secure the land. Part of that money will be to set up and prepare a second raise, which again, as you mentioned before, will be a multi-million-dollar raise. So preparing all the stuff for that will be in that aspect.
Right. And I want to be clear on this too. So, while we don't anticipate anything coming up that would prevent us from moving forward to the second raise, in the event that we did, we would stop spending this money. And these are estimates of what is spent, right? So, it's possible theoretically that if something catastrophic happened, we discovered the existence of a cement dwelling slug, for example, right? Like, because there's already a cement cap on the land, but if there was an environmental impact study that said, there's a rare cement slug that lives in the cement and you can't disturb that cement. I've never heard of anything like that, but if that ridiculous scenario were to happen, we would then stop spending money and we would utilize the additional money, including the $90,000, to pay back as much of the investment as possible, given that scenario. The other thing is, I am personally committed to investing at least $25,000 of my own money on those terms, and I've already started that process and invested some of it as well. So, so moving forward, know that we're putting our money in as well, not just the time. And I mean, we've been working on this for, as we said in the timeline, over 2 years now. So, but that's the basic project in a nutshell. Todd, is there anything you want to share with anyone before they jump into the end here?
No, I believe that covers everything. As you've mentioned before, I believe this has a very big need within the space that we can fulfill, and has a lot of ability to expand to service one of the fastest growing charter markets in the entire world.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And if people want more information, the best way to do that is to email me at invest, INVEST, at Mahoru it's not Catamarans, it's Mahoru.com. So it's MAHORU.com. So invest at MAHORU.com, just like it says on the screen here. And anyway, so Todd, anything else you want to share?
Nope, I think that covers it all. Thank you very much,
And
Jeff.
yeah, I appreciate that. And by the way, if you do email me, I will respond with a full copy of this presentation so you can examine it further. And I'm happy to set up a time to chat with you on the phone or over Zoom so we can have a conversation if it seems like something that you might be interested in. Or just email me to say hi if you want to. It's always good. So thanks so much. And I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.